Paris in the mid-1600s was a city in transition. It still carried the shape of the medieval world, but you can already see the early foundations of the modern city. Royal squares, organized boulevards, and new palaces were beginning to guide the expansion of Paris beyond its old walls. At the same time, daily life remained crowded, noisy, and deeply tied to the river. This video uses original engravings, maps, and paintings from the period to give you a clear sense of how Paris looked around 1640 to 1660. Let's take a walk through the city, starting in one of the most important new spaces of the century. We start our journey at the Palais Royal, one of the busiest and most influential places in 17th century Paris. Standing here today, you're looking at the residence that Cardinal Richelieu built, a place that carried enormous political weight. When Richelieu died, he left the palace to the young King Louis XIII, and after the king's death, it became the home of Anne of Austria and the future Louis XIV. Now we shift to the Place Royale, today known as the Place des Vosges. This is one of the oldest planned squares in Paris. It was designed during the reign of Henry IV and became the model for many European squares that followed. Next, we move to the Pont Neuf in 1660, one of the most important landmarks in Paris. The Pont Neuf was more than a bridge. It was a social stage. People met here, traded goods, spread gossip, performed, begged, flirted, and argued. The painting shows the moment when Louis XIV crossed the bridge during a ceremonial entry into Paris. Now let's move toward the Tuileries Palace and gardens. Only part of the palace survives today, but in the 1600s it was one of the main royal residences. The gardens were a major shift in French design. They followed the philosophy of André Le Nôtre, who believed that geometry, symmetry, and perspective expressed order and reason. When you walk through these gardens, you're walking through a carefully calculated vision of how nature should be shaped. Just beyond the main Tuileries garden, we see another perspective, one that highlights the edge of the gardens near the Port de la Conférence. This area sat beside the river and acted as one of the gateways to Paris. The long open paths, the quiet banks of the Seine, and the trees lining the water created a calmer, gentler part of the city. You can see how the garden merges with the surrounding landscape. This is where people came for a slower rhythm. They watched boats drift by or stood on the banks to talk with fishermen. This next image shows one of the most surprising sights in early Paris, the frozen Seine in 1608. Winters were colder during this period, and the river froze hard enough to walk on. People didn't waste the opportunity. They turned the frozen river into a huge playground. You can see skaters gliding in long arcs, children sliding on the ice, and small groups watching from the edge. Others stand around fires just to keep warm. Now we head to the Hotel de Ville, the Paris City Hall. This building symbolized civic authority, but it was also a stage for public celebration. In this engraving, you see crowds filling the square and a dramatic fireworks display exploding into the sky. Spectacle was a powerful tool in 17th century France, whether it was fireworks, processions, or public ceremonies. The city used these events to create unity and pride. The Hotel de Ville we see here is not the one we see today. The modern structure is a 19th century reconstruction. The original building in this engraving was smaller but richly decorated, with steep roofs, ornate windows, and a proud civic identity. Here is another view of the Hotel de Ville. This engraving focuses on the building's architecture, the symmetry, the tall pavilion roofs, the balanced windows, and the sense of order. The square in front of it was a hub for everyday activity. Markets, performers, gossiping citizens, and official announcements all happened here. If you wanted to feel the pulse of the city, you came to this square. Now we return to the heart of Old Paris, the Ile de la Cité. This is where the city began. The image gives us a calm view of Notre Dame rising above the river. In the 1600s, the cathedral still had its original medieval appearance. No spire, no restoration work, no Gothic revival touches. Just the building as medieval architects designed it. You can see the houses that lined the riverbanks. Many buildings stood directly above the water. The bridges were lined with houses too. Crossing a bridge felt like walking down a narrow street with shops and workshops on both sides. Here we see the Seine again, this time with the convent of the Augustinians. The river was constantly in motion. Ferries, barges, fishing boats, laundresses kneeling at the edge, and workers hauling goods to shore. Monasteries and convents played a large role in city life. They offered services to the poor, education to the young, and stability to the community. Their bells marked time throughout the day. Now we enter the Luxembourg Palace and gardens, built for Marie de Médicis. The palace brought Italian influence into Parisian design. The gardens stretch out in perfect symmetry. Walkers moved along the paths to enjoy fresh air and long views. From the upper terraces, you could see across the rooftops of the left bank. We end with an even more detailed map by Claes Jans, Fischer. This large engraving captures the entire city in extraordinary precision. Churches, bridges, walls, gardens, suburbs. Everything is drawn with almost obsessive care. Next comes the 1615 plan by Merian, one of the most detailed maps of early modern Paris. It shows the city as a compact world surrounded by walls, with the Seine splitting it in two. You can see the island at the center, the narrow medieval streets, and the long, straight avenues that had just begun to shape the city's future. Maps like this help us understand how dense Paris was. Buildings pressed tightly together, markets in every square, life spilling out onto the streets. At the city's edge, we find the Porte Saint-Bernard. This gate marked one of the entrances to Paris in the 1600s. Goods came through this gate, travelers entered the city here, and officials controlled access. Look at the river traffic beneath the bridge. Workers move barrels, boats glide toward the quay, and people gather near the water to talk or trade. If you were arriving in Paris by boat, this is one of the first sights you'd see. The city rising before you, busy and alive. Thank you for watching this reconstruction. If you enjoy seeing historical cities brought back to life, feel free to subscribe for more.